if you drain Christianity of the teachings of Jesus, I'm not even sure what it is. Well, one answer to that is I want to show you another.
You want to know what it is? It's MAGA. It's MAGA. Look around. Oh, you got Allie's book. There it is.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. This book just came in the mail here, and I want to
let's talk about that.
Show you this because this is a book called Toxic Empathy: How Progressives Exploit Christian Compassion, and basically this is the antithesis of your book. If you
agree. Toxic Empathy. You Christians are way too loving. You've gone way too far to the Jesus side. You got to come back to Donald Trump now. Go ahead, please.
She actually thinks that that basically we're not today's conservative Christians are not committed enough to homophobia and anti-abortion politics.
Yes, they don't follow Jesus. They worship power. They fight for conservative Christian power, not for anything Christ said. And that's how Trump got them on his side.
But let me give you an example of because one of the things you do in your book is you look at how they argue and you respond and you show how to deal with it. So I want to give an example of the way that she makes this case, because essentially what she does is she says, there's this natural instinct to be empathetic and that's all good, but we must follow the rules that are set out for us in the Bible. And so, for example, she has a whole chapter on homosexuality.
Oh yeah, and what does she what rules of Jesus does she follow to get there?
Well, I'm gonna tell you. She says the popular idea is that homosexuality isn't a sin because Jesus never said it. But this argument is illogical, a misrepresentation of Jesus and a misunderstanding of Scripture. It's illogical because the absence of condemnation doesn't equal support. Just because we don't see Jesus mentioning homosexuality by name doesn't mean he supported it. Jesus is God.
He really meant to hate them. He meant it. Sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
Whatever God says in the Old or New, here's where she gets to like her textual justification.
Yeah, here's where she gets really
whatever
full of
God says in the Old or New Testament. Jesus says also, Jesus' words aren't limited to what we read in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The entire biblical canon is his. It's all authoritative and without error,
all
which she
Oh,
cites.
no errors. It's all of it's exactly right. So,
Yes, and then she says, so then, just finally, she says, so yes, Scripture does clearly and unequivocally condemn homosexuality as sin, despite baseless claims to the contrary. Leviticus 18:22, 1 Corinthians 6:9, 1 Timothy 1:10, Romans.
Listen to her. Look at her. Yeah, she's going to go no Jesus, right? Going to Paul, beyond Jesus to Paul, and pre-Jesus to Leviticus. She can't quote Jesus for this because the only sexual sins Jesus ever condemns are adultery and dumping your wife. That's it. She can't do it. She doesn't follow Jesus. What she's doing here is a couple things. Number one, she's lying because Allie Beth Stuckey does not believe in Leviticus. She does not live by Leviticus. She does not obey or follow or respect what Leviticus commands. Leviticus is a rule book given to the Jews after they escaped bondage in Egypt and didn't realize they were about to spend 40 years in the wilderness with no Wi-Fi access or antibiotics or air conditioning. And it's God giving a lot of rules about how to keep your tribe's numbers up while still being devout. It's all about kosher diet, which I don't think is she kosher? Does she actually live by a kosher diet? Does she never eat ham? Because that's not allowed. You're also never allowed to tattoo the flesh. Men can never cut their hair at the temples. You've got to be an Orthodox Jew here. I didn't realize Allie Beth Stuckey was Orthodox Jewish. Leviticus commands you to stone to death anybody who works on Saturdays. Leviticus commands you to stone to death children who are gluttons or drunks. Deuteronomy says that if a man rapes a virgin, he's got to marry her. These are things. Deuteronomy also says if a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night, the whole town has to gather together and stone her to death. Is this what Allie Beth Stuckey is believing and fighting for? Because she wants to use Leviticus to attack the gays, but Leviticus 20:10 commands you to stone adulterers to death. So I don't think Allie Beth Stuckey has brought a lot of rocks to Mar-a-Lago, but I'm going to call the Secret Service and let them know. Again, they weaponize parts of Bible chapters that they don't follow. Allie Beth Stuckey is not Orthodox Jew. She is not kosher. She does not stone people to death for adultery or working on the Sabbath, which is Saturday. They weaponize lines from books they don't follow to hurt a minority that Christ commands them to love. Now, in Romans, that's Paul talking about in the past tense how there were these Romans who were committing idolatry, praying to animal gods, and God gave them over unto natural affection, so the men burned with lust for one another. Okay, well, that's what they used to say. The New Testament hates gays, but no, these are straight guys. God gave them over to unnatural. These are straight men, not gay men, that started hooking up with each other, and God gave them over to it. I think that's called forced bi in the fetish community, but it's not Paul talking about gay guys, and Paul is not Jesus. Allie Beth Stuckey needs Leviticus to be just as good as Christ. She needs Paul to be just as good as Christ, because I need an anything but Jesus loophole. And that's what they are, these small c Christians. Anything but Jesus Christians. So if you don't find the hate you want there, another book is just as good. And if I just may, the whole point of Jesus' movement is that it's not Orthodox Judaism. St. Paul's whole thing, the religion lasted because Paul sold it to the Gentiles in the Roman Empire, saying, no, keep your foreskin and have some bacon, and there's still eternal forgiveness. You have to deny that Jesus brought a new covenant. You have to deny that he brought a new covenant and said it used to be this, now I say it's this, right? That's the Sermon on the Mount. You have heard it said that eye for an eye, but I say to you, turn the other cheek. The whole Sermon on the Mount is Jesus saying it used to be this way, I'm saying it's this way. This is why the ultra-conservative Pharisees hated Jesus so much, because he was way too liberal and challenged the Orthodox Jewish laws. So Allie can say this to dumb people who don't read the Bible and have no concept of the history. But there's no part of the Bible you can use to say that being gay is a sin. None.
I am looking closely at this chapter, and I do notice that she does not actually cite anything that Jesus says.
No Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John there. In Corinthians and Timothy, Paul talks about, he uses a term that he made up that they think was meant to describe Roman temple prostitutes. But, because the Romans like to mess around with their boys, we know. But I mean, Jesus healed the Roman centurion's pais, beloved boy. It's called a slave in English, but the original Greek word was beloved boy, which is probably why the apostles were so disgusted at it. I mean, Jesus says essentially gay men are born that way in Matthew 19 when he gives his divorce laws, because Jesus overturns many laws of Moses, because Jesus is a different new covenant. Jesus overturns the death penalty. He overturns the divorce laws, and he says, if you kick your wife out for any reason other than adultery, well, then you are an adulterer yourself. But then he says, there's three groups of guys this doesn't belong to, and he lays out the three groups of men who aren't going to be marrying women. He calls them all eunuchs, but it's essentially people who are castrated, people who become celibate for God, and guys who are born out of the womb just not interested in girls, eunuchs who are born that way. He's talking about gay men being born that way. Nobody blinks an eye, and Jesus is like, my new divorce laws don't apply to the men who won't be marrying. There's so much evidence in the Bible that Jesus is not anti-gay, namely the Sermon on the Mount. You can't talk this bullshit that Allie pushes and claim to follow this guy. Toxic empathy. Turn away more refugees. Turn away more refugees while boasting of your piety.
Turning to the abortion chapter of the book, I mean, I was interested to find out, well, how do you use the text of the Bible to justify your opposition to abortion? And it's quite thin, this part. I mean, basically, she says that, God expresses deep detestation for the unjust killing of people. The prohibition of murder is the fifth of the Ten Commandments.
Yes, strong argument.
The Lord hates hands that shed innocent blood.
Yeah, strong argument.
Well, but that, and that's about it.
Yeah, so again, I'm not saying the Bible's pro-abortion or that Jesus would work as a clinic escort on the weekends, but abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. You wouldn't know this if you watched Fox News, but do you know why abortions are legal and free in Israel right now? Because the one religion that's in the Bible, that would be Judaism, the religion of Moses that Jesus dies being a Jew, Judaism never bans abortion. Judaism believes that life begins with first breath. That's repeated throughout the Gospels. Now, I'm not going to say that it's pro-abortion, but abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. They want to believe in a Christianity where God really wants men to force people to be pregnant against their will, where men force rape victims to be pregnant by their attacker against their will, and none of this appears in the Bible. At no point do they say you've got to force poor women to have greater poverty. My Christian take is, considering that abortion is less dangerous than pregnancy or childbirth, I don't have any goddamn right to tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her body. I'm on the side of men not telling women what to do with their bodies. That's the world Jesus grew up in. God, in Exodus 21, asserts that a fetus is property and that a woman's life has more value in his eye. In Numbers chapter 5, God gives rather gruesome, detailed abortion tips for pregnant, unfaithful wives. Let's talk about killing innocents because, you Gentiles heard about Passover? God killed the firstborn of all the Egyptian sons. God kills tons of kids and fetuses in this book. One time, God drowned every pregnant woman and fetus on earth with a flood because he was in a mood. Jesus never comes out against the death penalty, against abortion. God never mentions it. God never has any characters of the Bible say anything against abortion. Jesus is vigorously against the death penalty, but Allie Beth Stuckey thinks that Jesus is wrong on that, and Donald Trump is right. So again, man, you want to go ahead and fight for criminalizing abortion, go ahead. Don't tell me you're doing it because of Jesus.
It's actually funny in this book because she mentions the abortion defenders sometimes use the plagues to show God himself doesn't regard a life as sacred. Her response to that is, I won't pretend to have perfectly packaged answers on every question that exists about the nature of God, but my inability to understand the plans God carries out for his own glory doesn't obscure his command. Well, I don't know why.
That's why I wrote the book, Dathan, because if you're saying we have to criminalize abortion because of Jesus, because you're such a deep Christian, even though Jesus never mentioned abortion, but you support the death penalty, which Jesus actually opposed, then the rest of us aren't really obliged to take your claims of piety seriously anymore. You don't have to be, some of the best Christians I know are atheists, and you don't have to believe any of the Bible as literal fact to use it to push back against these people who are trying to use it to take over our country.
For more current affairs interviews and to get access to full-length interviews before anyone else, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/currentaffairs today.